Hi guys. So it's a really quick and simple one today, partly because the time's running back, but it's really just to give you an understanding about, I guess, kind of my journey and what I found over the last 10 years of what things have come back to. And really it begins with what biohacking is and what biohacking isn't. Now, everyone would be talking about biohacking, but have you actually heard the clear definition? There's quite a few different ones going around. So I always like to start with this because, really it comes back down to the art and science, biology and self-experimentation to take control and optimize your health, performance, and well-being. It's targeted, it's quantified, just like Boomer was saying a few minutes ago, that he likes to track things and get a baseline and move from there. It's mimicking a natural environment in an unnatural world, and I'll touch on that very shortly. And it's about preventative healthcare and for longevity. It's figuring out why we have a problem and fixing it, tracking it along the way so we can constantly improve. And it's one thing that's occurred to me recently is that it's making health fashionable. It was once popular to go out drinking and getting absolutely wasted on a Friday night. Now it's more fashionable to go out and have a grass-fed steak with your friends with biodynamic organic wine. So it's really making health fashionable, which is a change that's going on right now. And I think with COVID situation happening in the world, I think more and more people are waking up to this. So anyway, basically biohacking comes down to being a mindset with those things that I've just stated in there. And I'll give you an example, is that if someone says to me, oh, you do yoga, but you're a biohacker, that's not a biohack. Well, yoga to someone that isn't a biohacker, you're right, it's just yoga. But when you're using a systems thinking approach to optimizing your health, i.e., I have tight muscles, what do I need to do to fix that? So for instance, magnesium IV or yoga in the park or grounding. And that systems thinking approach is what biohacking truly is. What it's not is not having a chip implant in your hand so that you can access the underground without a debit card. It's not CRISPR, which is making your cat glow in the dark. Although there are exceptions to that rule, as wearing a Freestyle Libre glucose monitor, for instance, I like to track everything I eat to see how my body responds. That is one of the exceptions. But really, biohacking brings in all of these things such as health and fitness, medical, wellness, nutrition, biohacking, paleo, keto, functional medicine, preventative medicine, ancestral health, all of these things together into one place. And I think that's why it's growing to be so big, because it's pulling in all of these spaces together and it's become very fashionable. So there's a lot of shiny toys out there and there's a lot of tests out there, as Boomer was talking about the metabolomics test as well, which is also one of my very favorite tests as well. Thanks to Dr. Scott Scher and Dr. Ted Akikoso for that. And it's really easy to get caught up on these funky toys and spend all your money on them and still always be continually optimizing and looking for a 1% gain. But really, if you don't take it back to basics and start from there, then you're always just going to be chasing these shiny toys. Now, a lot of us biohackers are dopamine dominant, and that means that we love chasing shiny toys. We really do. So it's things like, for instance, shiny toys would be a PEMF device, PEMF, or UV, IV, or tracking your ketones or glucose, or having an EMF blocker, or going for hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or having a Carol AI exercise bike, or 50 different supplements that you take every day, which I'm still partly guilty of, I'm not going to deny, or doing IV, or red light therapy, or using a chili pad, or all of these things. But you really, really need to get the basics down. And it starts with the fundamental areas, which I always talk about, but it's because they're so important. So an example of that is, for instance, sleep is often talked about as being the number one biohack by myself and many of the other guys out there as well. And I've moved on from just sleep optimization now, because it's bigger than that. Sleep is a part of your daily routine, or as part of your daily rhythm, or circadian rhythm. And if you're optimizing just your sleep and forgetting the rest of the day, you are going to be missing a trick with your sleep. You're not going to be healing correctly. Your hormones won't be right, etc., etc., etc. So it's circadian rhythm, it's rest and sleep all rolled into one. So it's really important that you get these things down together. So an example of a sleep hack, for instance, would be obviously wearing blue blocking glasses in the evening, or having a blackout blind, which I have now moved on from. It can be having melatonin before bed, and you can read about this in Dr. Sachin Panda's book, The Circadian Code, which I really recommend everyone reading, everyone watching this to read this, because everything that's been talked about so far today, including what Boom has talked about with his supplements and glutamine and all these things, that's all great. But if you haven't got the timing of when you do these things or take these things down, it won't work as well as it should. Now, I'll give you an example. This is one of Dr. Sachin Panda's examples as well, actually, which is they had two sets of mice or rats, and they both had identical meals, and they were both obese. What they did was they let one group of them eat whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, around the clock. The other set, they let eat exactly the same food, exactly the same amounts, except they made them eat within an 8-hour window. Now, the ones that ate in an 8-hour window, and actually 6 was most optimal, lost weight. Now, why is that? It's because after a certain time of day, and that's around sunset, we can produce 50 times less insulin than we do before sunset. Now, obviously, genes turn on and off at different times of the day based on different factors, and insulin response is one of those. So if you are eating after sunset, regardless if you're wearing blue blockers, you will have higher blood sugar through the night, which means you will store that as fat. Your body will be using energy to do so. And instead of using the energy that you have collected through the day to heal your body, you will be processing things. So you won't sleep as deep. Your heart rate will be slightly higher. Your heart rate variability will be slightly lower. So even by not optimizing your sleep intentionally, you are optimizing your daily routine, which helps your sleep. Now, to take it one step further back from there is that if you think to our ancestral or tribal days, we would wake up in the morning with sunrise in our cave. We would go off and pick some berries or chase after an animal if you're a meat eater and kill it, which would be your high intensity exercise. You would then bring it back to the cave and eat it during the day, during sunlight, and probably store some of it at the side of the cave for the family and the kids, and then go off and get some more food. While it's in the cave, some of it would ferment for a day or two if it was a decent sized animal, which means it would be fermented food. And so you'd have high intensity exercise and you would eat fermented food. Now, after sunset, you wouldn't see anything. You probably wouldn't see anything at all, and you might just have a little bit of campfire. But that is a very different light spectrum to a mobile phone that is bright blue light, which is why having the exercise at the right time of day based on how we evolved, eating at the right time of day based on how we evolved, and only having certain wavelengths of light at certain times of day is how we evolved. And not eating past sunset is also how we evolved. And you can test this. You can get a Freestyle Libre glucose monitor on your arm, and you can test this for yourself and stop eating at 5 o'clock if you're in bed at, say, 9, 10, 11 o'clock, and see how your blood glucose is much lower, significantly lower through the night if you change the timing of it. So really this underpins why you should do things depending on the time of day. Now, the second point I often talk about is hydration. Now, that is the minerals or trace elements if you have something like Quinton hypertonic, for instance, and that helps our electrical system. Now, if you are to eat outside of your 8-hour window, the only thing you should have is water with minerals, which will hydrate you. And that will help your adrenals when you wake in the morning, opposed to stressing them. And I use Sol solution, which is salt water, actually Himalayan rock salt water or Celtic sea salt water on waking on an empty stomach with a glass of water, which helps that. Now, the other thing that I like to add in here is obviously sunlight and grounding I often pair together because it's a big part of nature, obviously. Now, also a part of what I have been reading around and testing myself with several people rather, is grounding at the right times of day. Now, obviously we evolved without rubber shoes on, and we evolved with bare feet that sweat very easily, that have lots of nerve endings in them. And that was so that we would be connected with nature. And we evolved with maybe leather wrapped around our feet, which meant we were still connected to the ground. Now, depending on the time of day, I have read in several places now, the flow of free electrons from the earth, which we get into our body, which those free electrons pair with free radicals to reduce inflammation and promote healing. It changes depending on the time of day, apparently. Now, I can't test or track this personally, but if you ground in the morning when sunrise is there, you are getting positive photons from the sun, which is energy. You're getting free electrons from the earth, and we are like a biocircuit board in between. So that promotes mitochondrial health. It reduces inflammation, and it helps give us energy. Now, the thing is the more sunlight we have, the more we produce melatonin, and the less blue light we have in the afternoon or evening, the more melatonin we actually have as well. So those two things go very well. So what I've been doing is waking up in the morning, and I've been having my grounding session in the sunrise, and I've been doing that as long as I possibly can. And then throughout the day, as much grounding as I can. And then before bed, I go out again and make sure I ground for at least 20 or 30 minutes before I go to bed, on the belief that the body can tell what time of day it is by the flow of free electrons. So this is why timing really wraps into everything. And so people will say, try this supplement or try that, or do this blood test and do that blood test and try this different biohack. But if you don't get the timing of it down, it's not going to be as effective as it could be. And that is really, really, really critically important thing. And a few people that I have advised recently that have not been able to get their sleep down properly, that have been very close, admittedly, but haven't been able to get the last bit nailed. All we've done is change the timing of the moment they start eating to the moment they finish eating, and the grounding with the sunlight in the morning, and the grounding at the end of the day. And it has nailed it for them in every case. So I'm open to questions now if you have any questions on this, because I think